We're back for qualifying. Welcome everybody to Imola. 14 minutes on the clock. And multiple cars out on track. About half of them, I should say. Just over now as Verstappen leaves the pit lane to get their first lap prepared, ready for one of the most important qualifying sessions you'll get in the year. It's Fernando Alonso who goes to the top of the times. But Lewis Hamilton is going pretty quick as they go purple. So does Albon in the first sector. Hamilton doesn't get there to Fernando Alonso though. Albon now tops the times ahead of Fernando Alonso. Hamilton to P3 didn't beat Alonso's time, so seems to be a pretty decent lap from Alonso to begin with. However, Hamilton and Leclerc can probably go much quicker. Of course, upgrade packages being brought most notably by Haas and Aston Martin with big upgrades. But it's Williams and Sauber who are not bringing any upgrades to the circuit. Oh, and Tsunoda's stationary on the circuit there as they come through turn 6. It's a yellow flag, and I think it's a pretty big crash. As I said, turn 6 is going to be the corner to look at, and we have literally had the first couple of laps of the session, and Yuki Tsunoda has found turn 6. And that'll be the session over for them. Red flag, 12 minutes on the clock. It will be paused. And we'll have to wait for that one to be rebuilt. Yuki Tsunoda in the wall. Yuki Tsunoda does get out of the car. So good to know that they are safe. They've ridden over the curb and gone a little bit all over the place. Yuki Tsunoda out of this one. And they're frustrated throughout the weekend already with blocking during the practice session, not getting a clean lap together. They also had a massive difference between themselves and their teammate. Their teammate in the top 3 times in FP3 where you're really getting the car dialed in, ready for the next session, whereas Yuki was down in the bottom 5 effectively. So Yuki Tsunoda not having a great weekend, and now coming immediately into qualifying and out of the session without a single time lap. Verstappen was going purple in the first sector, looking to take it away from Alex Albon. For now, it will stand. Of course, we've got a fair few drivers who did do some outlaps but didn't get to go again. Antonelli Russell on outlaps. I thought one of the McLarens was also on an outlap, but I'm not entirely sure. Now, we're going to have plenty of time in the session, of course, to do a couple of runs. 1 or 2 will be the bet. It does mean that you've got a little bit more of a worry about getting a lap done. Not necessarily for the ones that have set lap times, but for the ones that haven't set lap times, it's a little bit more difficult. Colapinto is really not in an ideal situation for their first qualifying session of the year, of course. But it's the cards they've been dealt, and they'll give it a shot. We'll wait for that call to see when we are ready to go back to green flag conditions and enjoy the session from there. But for now, we will be at a standstill. And that is a shame. That's a shame for Red Bull, where they were hoping to make some kind of strides towards McLaren in car performance with a fair few upgrades. Side pod for cooling, also radiator, suspension and wheel ducts. So they've really focused on airflow and trying to get the car a little bit cooler. I think that's probably to try and get the peak performance out of the car for a little bit longer, because the Red Bull seems to be very, very quick in qualifying and at the start of the race, but it just loses out later on. That's good news for Max Verstappen this weekend, where you've got a circuit that's very, very tricky, but it's really hard to overtake at. So if they are in the lead, there's not really much chance of anybody overtaking. That being said, McLaren has also brought an upgrade this weekend as well. Rear wing, downforce and suspension upgrades. That rear wing downforce is going to be crucial around this circuit, and with 1-2s being the case for the McLarens throughout the entire practice sessions this weekend. I'm going to double check that just to fact check FP3 was a 1-2, and it was a 1-2. So dominance effectively right now from the McLarens. They're going to be very, very hard to beat. With that downforce upgrade as well to add to that, I don't know if Max Verstappen's going to have much of a chance in qualifying, and McLaren could run away with this one. And of course, it's going to be a battle between the two teammates, and this will be a bit of a turning point. A track that we know that Lando Norris has been very good at in the past. Since 2021, they've had pretty much a podium every single race, except from 23, which didn't run. So a podium extravaganza for Lando Norris around this circuit. They absolutely love it. This is their time to shine, to try and win, and they kind of have to, because Lando Norris has got credibility around this circuit. If Oscar Piastri turns around and goes, you know what, I'm going to win the Grand Prix, then that is a bit of a statement, and Lando's momentum could be it. Like, it could be lost. The championship could be lost. That's very dramatic and over dramatic, but it would be pretty devastating to Lando Norris's championship momentum, and they'll have to hope that they can recoup. But it's a difficult one, and this is their chance to do it. This is their opportunity. This is the circuit that they can try and get points back on their rival. 16 points behind in the Drivers' Championship. We are just waiting for confirmation to be able to go back on track at the moment after a crash from Yuki Tsunoda, a big crash from Yuki Tsunoda. Without setting a lap in qualifying, they will be guaranteed out. Of course, unless another car that's currently behind them in the order doesn't set a lap, or if somebody gets disqualified from qualifying, they will start last in the Grand Prix tomorrow. Whereas their teammate went purple in the first sector. Yuki Tsunoda, I do not believe, actually made it to the first sector, unless they did, and I've completely missed that one. But a big crash, a big repair job, and the mechanics will be busy for a while. So that's a barrel roll. Yet to see it, but it is apparently a barrel roll that occurred from Yuki Tsunoda. So a big, big crash. It's on a few. We've seen a few barrel rolls in the past. Of course, that was with Marcus Ericsson and Monza. Another Italian Grand Prix, but back in 2018, that was a fair few years ago. And now, something a little bit awkward here. This is the reason why Red Bull didn't want Yuki Tsunoda in the Red Bull car. That was one of the reasons that we heard from Helmut Marko, at least. And it's not bode well, of course. The performance, although we thought it could be there and points have been scored, it's not there as much as we want, as close to Max Verstappen, of course. And the damage now is done, and with apparently a big crash happening and a lot of damage, they've done exactly what the team didn't want them to do. Yuki Tsunoda's going to be in a little bit of trouble with this one. I'm sure he's feeling very down at the moment. We're just waiting for the next stages. There we are, the confirmation. 2 minutes. We will be able to go once again. which is good news, of course. Colapinto could be in a little bit of trouble here. They've just gone over the pit lane, into the fast lane, sorry, when they weren't allowed to. So what you could see on the screen there is the estimated time icon, and then the Q1 confirmation will resume. And that wasn't released. That second part wasn't released. They were released before that second confirmation was given, and that is not within the regulations. So, Colapinto could be in trouble here. Now we see the cars return back to the circuit. Good to see. And we are once again running as normal. Colapinto first out on track, and the two Saubers directly behind. Now, Colapinto had a few sessions, of course, so far. Well, 3. FP1, FP2, FP3. No offs, or big offs at least. No major issues. They were quite a way off their teammate in FP1 and FP2. But FP3, they did manage to get nice and close to their teammate. However, that being said, Pierre Gasly absolutely shone in FP1 and FP2, up in P3 and FP2. But then in FP3, Pierre Gasly had a really, really tough time. That is Colapinto, car 43, being noted. The chances are that will be maybe a fine. But it probably won't be any more than that. So we might get a confirmation of that in a few minutes, or after the session, after qualifying. It could be confirmed. Lots of cars out on track now. We are under 10 minutes, 9.5 minutes to go of this session. And we're going to see the next couple of cars get their laps done, of course. It's Colapinto who's coming into the final few corners as they go past the slow-moving car of Carlos Sainz, who will start their lap very, very shortly as well. Colapinto across the line. What's it going to be for the Argentine driver? And that's going to be a P3 for Franco Colapinto, behind Fernando Alonso by a small margin, but still up there. They've improved. Hulkenberg P6, not able to get any further. That's where I was hoping the Saubers would be able to find some performance, but it didn't work out right there with Nico Hülkenberg. Bortoleto will follow on behind, but I don't think they improved overall lap time. So yeah, they no, they did improve their last lap, but still not anything spectacular, and they didn't improve position wise. It's Lawson to P5 who makes some progress, and we've got also Gasly starting a lap as they go up a few positions because of the timing. Data Hadjar P3 still behind Fernando Alonso. Lots of cars behind Fernando Alonso. Alonso's not far away from Alex Albon. Are they close to the Williams pace? Has Alonso found an absolute masterclass of a lap? Is he going to be able to beat his own lap, let alone get into the next part of qualifying? I don't know. Well, a lot of cars are going to be on the scrub tyres here. That's the thing that we're looking at. Because we've got a very short session, these scrub tyres are going to be difficult to manage, especially since we saw those issues in the practice sessions with the C6 tyre, the new C6 soft compound tyre. The balance wasn't great. The grip was very, very slippy once you really got that tyre worked up. And we saw many cars do some quick sectors in others, but then not PB in the others compared to that medium tyre. It's a little bit of a tricky one. They're suggesting that the teams will have got a handle of it now they get to qualifying, of course. But we did see a €5,000 fine for Ferrari after yesterday's practice sessions for tinkering with their tyres when they shouldn't have been doing so. Purple in the first sector for Max Verstappen, who's going pretty quick. That's Lance Stroll, who does improve ahead of Fernando Alonso. Carlos Sainz also managed to get ahead, but Gasly does find some pace. But it's Alonso who immediately takes it back. Purple in the middle sector, 2.5 tenths up. Max Verstappen doesn't take away the purple middle sector right there from Fernando Alonso. 2.191 and a 176. So Fernando has managed to find an absolute masterful middle sector. Will they be able to hold on to it now as the McLarens go through and Lando Norris reaches the third sector? They don't go purple in the first sectors as Verstappen has that. Verstappen takes it to the top by half a second. Absolutely incredible stuff right there. And it's still not purple from any McLaren driver in the middle sector. Lando Norris, in fact, has had a really bad middle and first sector, for that matter, compared to Max Verstappen. He's going to be well off and may even have to back off on this lap. Oscar Piastri, 26.2, a little bit more competitive, but still not faster than Fernando Alonso in that middle sector. Still the quickest guy there. There is Max Verstappen, of course, on top, but it's Norris to P5, as they've lost out a lot of time right behind Gasly, but 7.5 tenths away from Max Verstappen, who we thought might be able to compete for pole position, but I didn't think it was going to be this straightforward, as Oscar Piastri, almost 3.5 tenths behind, but still to P2. 2 tenths ahead of Fernando Alonso. Absolutely incredible. I didn't expect this. 5 minutes to go, and we've got a hell of a mix-up. Sure, it's Q1, and it's not like it's Q3. They've got time, and of course they're going to have a bit more of a better session than Q2 and 3, because it won't, well, ideally wouldn't have been interrupted. But right now, it's looking a bit interesting, and we're going to have a few cars probably rushing to guard again. Definitely the Aston Martins, because this is an opportunity for them to get into the second part of qualifying. This is a brilliant opportunity for Aston Martin. The Haas's really not having a good qualifying session right now, and of course Sauber really struggling a little bit at the moment. Colapinto down to P14 since their lap. That's Gasly P5, 7 tenths away from Max Verstappen. 3 tenths away is Colapinto from his teammate, more or less. That is Norris going all the way to track limits. I don't think they got a track limit for that. They were on the line, and by the time they got to the line, they met the grass on the outside, so they would have lost time anyway, which is good because we shouldn't see any track limit penalties or overtaking off track kind of flags or pings later on in the weekend. Charles Leclerc finding the chicane pretty complicated to deal with at turns 14 and 15, as they have done in the past, and we saw that in 2022. It got the better of them. This time it's more of a power slide on the exit instead of a complete spin or loss of control. Predicted knockout time is a 15.9 right now. That would suggest that Gasly is not safe, which is understandable. Expected, I think. That's fair to say. Gasly may not be safe in this session. Okay, so we do see what I thought we may see is a few cars trying the medium tyre. Aston Martin really going for a gamble where it is going to be important. We got a few unsafe releases in the pit lane as the Sauber blocked Kimi Antonelli. I think it was not what it looked like, but it's still not ideal, of course. As I was saying, Lance Stroll on the medium tyre. I thought we might see a few drivers try and go out on what should be the slower compound tyre, but because it had a lot more balance, it was a lot more stable, it might be that it's going to be a bit more of a struggle to stay quick on that soft tyre, and the medium tyre might be the one to go for. Drivers might be a bit more comfortable to set some good lap times and really improve their pace. And there is a noted symbol there for Nico Hülkenberg, currently being flagged for blocking Kimi Antonelli on the pit lane exit. And we got a few cars coming through the first sector. That's Lando Norris, and that is Gabriel Bortoleto. Of course, Hülkenberg as well, who has recently come out, and they will now get ready for their second sector as Lando Norris, 26.2. They have really got to try and find a little bit more. Currently, outside of the predicted knockout range. That is a purple middle sector from Oscar Piastri, who's going nice and quick at the moment. But it's Lando Norris, who we watch come out the final corner and across the line for the Brit. P5. And it's a 0.8. They're only on the limit of the predicted knockout. I think that predicted knockout's maybe a little bit wrong then, because surely a McLaren isn't going to get knocked out of Q1. That surely can't happen. Well, it's purple for Oscar Piastri. It's the final corner for Hülkenberg and Oscar Piastri. Hülkenberg is going to be out of this session. So, Bortoletta's in the drop zone. Lando Norris in... sorry, not Lando Norris. It is Oscar Piastri who comes on the final corner, but they actually went into the pit lane. I think they feel safe. They went purple in that first sector, but they go straight into the pit lane, and that's their session done. As we got a few more green sectors from Behrman, Ocon, they're coming across the line. There is Esteban Ocon, who is P18. They'll be knocked out of qualifying. What can Oliver Behrman do as they'll come across the line? We've got Liam Lawson, who will be out of qualifying as well. It's all about Oliver Behrman, but no! Franco Colapinto is in the wall! I do not believe it! Oliver Behrman is going to complete their lap, and they may have just got away with it. They may have got away with the yellows. Oliver Behrman might just be able to hold on to it, as that was in the next part of the circuit, of course. The first part of the circuit and not in the final. And that is a big shunt there for Franco Colapinto. Oh, that suspension is gone. They're into Q2. But Yuki Tsunoda, of course, is not in this session. And you can't make it into Q2 if you're not in a working car, Franco Colapinto is going to be very disappointed with that one. Wow, that's absolutely spectacular. I didn't expect it. You couldn't write it, could you? You could not write it. Franco Colapinto into the barrier in the final moments of qualifying, potentially preventing Oliver Behrman's lap time from being legal. They're definitely going to be investigating that one, as Oliver Behrman was in the drop zone behind their teammate in P19, and they managed to get a lap time good enough for P10, and that pushed out Gabriel Bortoleto. It was the final corner, of course, that was Behrman was going through, whereas the crash has happened in the first couple of corners. For Colapinto getting over the curb on the exit of turn 3 into 4 and getting on the grass as Isaac Hadjar did, but instead of hitting the barrier with the right side, or sorry, the left side tyres as Hadjar did, and with a lot less speed, you're at qualifying pace instead, and he's hit the car on the front end, taking away both wheels from their original positions. And that's the risk that you have if you crush the car front on, with a lot of momentum, of course, as well. So multiple times we've seen that so far this weekend, and we see it happen again. So Oliver Behrman sets that lap time, but the red flag comes out, and I think it was seconds before, or seconds after the red flag came out, Oliver Behrman crossed the line. So if it was a red flag, then the lap doesn't stand. If it was a yellow flag, the lap would stand, because they come through the final sector, the third sector. It's safe to go at racing speed, whereas in the first sector the crash was. But because of the red flag, it deletes that lap time. It promotes Bortoleto into the next part of qualifying for now, and Oliver Behrman is now in P19, starting effectively at the last of the qualifiers. And well, what we're seeing now is a red flag, of course, and that does mean there's going to be some time for the Haas team to try and argue with the race director to get that lap reinstated, argue with the stewards, the FIA, to try and have that lap reinstated so they can get into the second part of qualifying. But Bortoleto is going to be praying that that is not the case and hoping that they follow the regulation, as I see it would be. So Bortoleto, for their sake, hopefully they can stay in this part, because I think that Sauber can do something in qualifying. Maybe not make it to Q3, but I thought that a Sauber might make it through. Has it made it through? We don't know yet, but it looks like it has. I was a little bit worried throughout that session, and I'm still a little bit worried at the moment. It's not entirely confirmed. So Q1 is done, and we will wait for Q2 to come around. Oliver Behrman still sits in the car trying to find themselves a place into Q2 by not setting the lap time, but trying to get it reinstated by the FIA. They want to try and keep Oliver Behrman in the state of mind for qualifying. So they're not going to give it up easy. They will stay in that car. Okay, so Oliver Behrman did set that lap time when the red flag was waved at the last second. I think that pretty much confirms that we will not see Oliver Behrman get their lap reinstated, and they will start the race in P19. Also, Jack Doohan is at the circuit this weekend. Maybe they couldn't cancel their flights. And they will be supporting the team, of course. They didn't need to cancel their flights. As they do their normal duties as a test and reserve driver, which they would have been doing well before. They know exactly what they need to do. They've just seen in the pit lane comforting Esteban Ocon, who's been knocked out. Of course, an Alpine driver last year actually replaced Ocon at Alpine in the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix for the final race of 2024. And we wait for the confirmation to go again. Track is set clear and qualifying will start in about 3 minutes time. So the delay, of course, has come through. So 44 minutes later, after 2 red flags, one for Yuki Tsunoda at the start of Q1 and the other for Franco Colapinto at the end of Q1. And of course, Colapinto gets an extra position due to Oliver Bearman being demoted back down. So Colapinto will start this race in 14th. Not 14th, 15th. Because it doesn't matter where Bearman is. They will stay... Right, it's Lawson, Hulkenberg and Ocon that will get promoted an extra position. Now, we still have some questions on what the tyres will be going into Q2. Will teams opt for the medium tyre? Will they opt for the C6 soft tyre? That seems to be, although meant to be the fastest, not the fastest. Or not the most consistent and easy to get on with. Well, it's been predicted that it will stay as it is as normal. But it's not impossible that we see some changes. And here we go. Never mind. Start of Q2 will be delayed, it says. As we wait, Oliver Bearman has been told they'll get ready to go anyway. That was at 3:35. Of course. Now, it did say about 7 minutes ago Q2 will start at 4:46 local time. It has since said it will not. Now, the lap time of Oliver Bearman is now under review by the stewards at 46 minutes and 51 seconds local time. So, we still don't know when the delay will come to, and we still don't know if Oliver Bearman is going to have their lap reinstated. Well, at the moment, it seems to be that that's the reason why we're getting a delay. I thought it was pretty straightforward as to what was going to happen. I thought I heard it was a pretty straightforward call that Bearman's lap will not stand, and I don't really see any other way of it going. That is Bortoletto's position. We just wait for the race director to let us know when the session will resume, but for now, we have to sit and wait. We just want to see the cars on track, don't we? Who do I predict getting pole position? Well, I think it's going to be Lando... No, I think it's going to be... Lando Norris. It's going to be Oscar Piastri in P2, and it's going to be Max Verstappen in P3. P4, we will see Kimi Antonelli ahead of George Russell. Why not? Why not? And then we'll see a mix of the Williams and the Ferraris, I think, followed by Gasly, and then the Aston Martin. Or had, yeah, no, the Aston Martins then Hadjar. The Astons had a really good session right there, and they put the medium tyres on as well to finish off that session. I don't know if they set their lap times on the medium. They must have. Well, Lance Stroll definitely must have. So it seemed to be competitive enough to get them through. It's just whether they will use the tyre again or not, I don't know. We are still waiting, and we have no idea of what's happening. The stewards have put everything on hold to make sure that the qualifying order is right, to make sure that they are sure that Oliver Bearman isn't in the next part of qualifying. And it means that the world is completely on hold at this point. Okay, we still wait. No updates. No information. We're just waiting for the stewards. Everybody's sat in the garage. The car's off, cooling down. And they'll have to get back up to optimal temperature, ready for their qualifying laps. A few drivers maybe on some scrub tyres when they leave the pit lane. Even though it's the first stages of Q2. Looking at the pictures, it looks like there is a massive cloud of rain in the distance. But I don't think it's gonna have an impact on the race. We checked the weather earlier on. It shouldn't be a problem. I should say qualifying, not the race. Q2 will start at 58. 5 minutes from now, an even longer delay. No more information on Oliver Bearman's lap. And it seems to be that it will stand as it is. Alrighty, well, it looks a little bit more 50-50 here. Looking at some more pictures with Oliver Behrman's on board, they're suggesting that it could be possible for Oliver Behrman to get into the next part of qualifying. As looking at the onboard, you can see that the red flag board, the flashing light, doesn't come up until after they've crossed the line. So that would suggest that Oliver Behrman was completely right to do so. But Gabriel Bortoleto is leaving the pit lane. And I think it's going to be it. So now Bortoleto is waiting at the end of the pit lane, making the statements, the confirmation at 4:58 we will be going in about 2 minutes. Bortoleto's tried to really put their car in a position where you can't change any of the calls. I have to be honest with you, I think if the lap stands for as long as it does, it's got to stay. They've got to get it right, surely. We still have no idea on what's being done, but I believe the stewards have just passed it, and that will be that. That will be the lap done. We're this close to the session starting again without any confirmation. I'm going to assume that is it. Oliver Behrman will not make it into Q2. We will see the Sauber out on track in a few moments' time. DRS enabled. The green flag is about to come out. Or the green light, and we'll be able to go out on track. What if we see 16 drivers go into qualifying and Behrman's going to get a lap also? That would be absolutely outrageous. Green light. Pit lane exit is open. Gabriel Bortoleto leaves and is on track. It is confirmed. Oliver Behrman has sat in the car, but unfortunately nothing will come out of that. And the engineers will prep the car. Oliver Behrman will leave. Wow. I do not know what to say. That took a long time. That took a very long time. But it seemed like it was just kind of dismissed without any confirmation. Anyway, Bortoleto doesn't care because they're currently on the exit of the hairpin into turn 9 for the fast left-hander. Enjoying a lovely Q2 session more than anyone else because they have come out basically immediately as soon as they had the opportunity. On the way out of the pit lane, Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll have put the soft compound tyre on. That is for sure. Bortoleto starts the time lap now. Max Verstappen will chase them down, looking to try and get a nice banker into this Q2 session. It only gets more competitive from here, and you've really got to make it count in qualifying too. If you make a mistake and you're a front runner car, it's not only like, you know, you'll drop a few positions, you will be eaten up by the midfield. That is very, very close, and when they're close together, you don't know where you're going to end up. That's what you've seen so far this season. That's what you've seen even last year happen a couple of times with a few drivers. It's not like the mid 2010s to late 2010s where we saw the front runners just absolutely dominate. It's a little bit difficult, a bit more complicated. Sure, McLaren flying, Verstappen flying, the rest of the field very close. Unless you see a few drivers here and there find some brilliant pace, it's a little bit complicated. Bortoleto comes into the final few corners. They pass Hamilton into the penultimate one. Well, effectively, that was the penultimate one. Now they go across the line. What's it going to be for Gabriel Bortoleto? It will be a 16.683. Verstappen going purple in the first sector, however. So Verstappen will be the next car to do anything about this. The Mercedes up ahead of them are preparing their laps. Russell will move out the way of Verstappen. Russell will move out the way of Verstappen. There you go, just about. That was a little bit risky. I thought that wasn't going to be the case very shortly, but it is the case. It's Verstappen who goes purple in the middle sector. Leclerc actually goes purple in the first sector. Now there is Verstappen ahead by 1.2 seconds. But it's Charles Leclerc who is looking very, very quick. The two Aston Martins will come up next. It's Lando Norris who's going to start right behind and get a distant tow from Lance Stroll to help them in qualifying. There is Lance Stroll across the line ahead of Gabriel Bortoleto by half a second. Basically almost splitting in the middle right there. Fernando Alonso takes that ahead of the Canadian driver. And then everybody starts piling in, putting on the lap times. And there's Charles Leclerc with the purple first sector for a moment to P2, but that's being immediately beaten by George Russell. Hamilton to P3 behind his teammate by 1.5 tenths. And we will see the next few cars come up. Antonelli will be across the line. It's Hadjar, however, first, who goes to P4 to split the Ferraris and the Aston Martins. What is Oscar Piastri doing as they start their next lap? It's Antonelli, the home hero. The one they all want to do well here in Imola. Kimi Antonelli round the final corner, DRS wide open and across the line to take a P6. For now, 7 tenths away from Max Verstappen. Not going to be what they want, considering George Russell has just gone 1.5 tenths away and purple in that first sector as well. Absolutely incredible stuff there from George Russell. A big, big, big problem here for Kimi Antonelli, who wants to perform. Lando Norris takes it away. Purple in the first sector. Still not beating George Russell, but they do get that top spot. It's Oscar Piastri, who is also not faster than George Russell, but is going nice and quickly. Alex Albon, P10. Brilliant stuff there from the Thai driver. Purple in the middle sector now for Oscar Piastri. Beats his teammate's sector time there. And we've got one final one to go through, and we will see what the Australian can do. Now the sole Australian driver on the grid. Oscar Piastri holds a nation on their shoulders, and they hold the DRS button. It is P1 for the man from Melbourne. Carlos Sainz is about to cross the line there, the next car to do something about it in qualifying here. Of course, Colapinto will not be setting a lap after that crash. They'll be getting repairs done as quickly as they can. Carlos Sainz to P9 and a fair bit ahead of their teammate as well. About 3-4 tenths in the end. So the Williams not really finding the pace that we were looking to find since Miami and the first couple of practice sessions in Imola, of course. Williams has really got to try and figure something out here. Really squirmy for Alex Albon actually over the turn 14-15 chicane, so that's where they've lost all their lap time. So they can go a lot quicker. They can get themselves into what is currently good enough to get into Q3, but of course everybody's going to improve again, and you don't know if you're going to be safe or not until the final moments. 7 minutes on the clock, and we're going to see a lot of cars into the pit lane. I'm surprised that we haven't seen a couple more cars out since then to try and get multiple more laps in. It looks like we're going to see a fair few cars just wait until the final stages. I thought Bortoletto might try and give it a go. The Salva doesn't get that much of a chance to run in qualifying, so I thought they might try and get 2 runs done in or like 3 runs done in Q2, and then maybe have no run or just 1 run in Q3 if they were to get into it. Maybe they've given up and they've set the lap time and they're just going to sit the car back, not crash, relax, save any cost damage, and let it be. Alternatively, they will leave the pit lane at the optimal time anyway, if they trust in their driver. So far, we have lost Liam Lawson, Nico Hulkenberg, who had their lap time deleted, Esteban Ocon, followed by Oliver Behrman, who also had their lap time deleted, and Yuki Tsunoda, who had a collision at the beginning of Q1 with the barrier. Colapinto, in the final stages of Q1, had a collision with the barrier as well. It's Gasly, who's got a lot of instability over the 14-15 chicane, as many drivers are struggling with. But once again, I want to say, actually, I didn't know if Tsunoda actually hit the barrier or not, but I do know that they barrel rolled the car, so they had a few problems. Gasly not happy with the pace of the car. They had it dialed in on Friday, Saturday. Either they've done something wrong or the other teams have done something right. And now Gasly is in trouble. They are going to be in a struggle here. And we now see the drivers on their way out. A few are getting prepared to leave that pit lane. 4 minutes on the clock. It's going to be a mad dash. And I bet you we're going to see some traffic. I bet you we're going to see some impeding. Get ready for that. That's going to be absolutely crazy. We saw it a lot in practice. If we saw it a lot in practice, then we're going to see it a lot in qualifying as well. We do have less cars on the track, of course, because it is Q2. We lost the 5 slowest cars from the session earlier on, the 18-minute session. We're now in the 15-minute session with the 4 minutes left to go. So we do see a little bit less potential for traffic, but still with a narrow circuit and the amount of cars that have been impeded so far this weekend, there could be a few issues, especially when everything is getting incredibly competitive. You can see Bortoletto out first once again, not going to get the optimal temperatures on track or the optimal kind of rubbering in from the track, but they will still get a clean lap in, I'm sure. You can see all the other cars going very slowly as they leave the pit lane, trying to avoid the minimal delta time by slowing down before they leave the pit lane to make sure that they've got a gap between themselves and the car ahead. George Russell, the latest one to leave the pit lane, and you'll get another car pop up. There you go. Max Verstappen does exactly the same thing and will follow on behind George Russell. Usually Verstappen is pretty quick on their outlaps, at least from what I remember, and they can really push the not limits, but push the other cars into doing things they don't want to, and it works out for them, of course. Massive amount of poles. Of course, only since 2019, where they seemed to struggle in the Red Bull at the time to get those pole positions, but they got a fair few victories. Now in the 60s range of victories, of course, taking that victory in Japan. Can they get pole position here in Imola and go for another pole position in the Grand Prix format of qualifying? Bortoleto coming through the first sector now and into the second. We'll see what they can do. A 24-1. They are improving. Is that going to be enough, though, for the final moments? Minute 20 on the clock. The cars are coming through. Bortoleto crosses the line to P12. They will not go any further in qualifying here. And that will be it for them unless they get demoted by Gasly or Albon. It's Isaac Hadjar to P4 with a brilliant lap. Despite not improving in the first sector, they find themselves quite possibly safe here in qualifying. Almost 3/10 away from Piastri. However, it's Antonelli, the home hero, across the line. What's it going to be? Oh, it's P8 for Kimi Antonelli. Is that going to be enough? I do not know. George Russell, their teammate, is a fair bit ahead of them so far this weekend. It's purple in the first sector for Carlos Sainz, who's looking to try and demote the home hero themselves. Will they be able to get the job done, though? That is the question. Lance Stroll to P12, or they stay P11 as they're starting their next lap. Of course, the two Aston Martins once again on the medium tyre. There is George Russell to P3 to push down Max Verstappen at the moment. Almost a tenth away from Piastri, but that is a lot more competitive, a lot closer. Is anyone safe? The two McLarens are still out on track to try and go a little bit quicker, because you can see Carlos Sainz come around the final few corners. They're going very, very fast at the moment. Out the final corner, all over the curb. DRS available. The Spaniard goes to P1 for now. Absolutely amazing. Almost half a tenth ahead right now. Really having some good momentum. That should be that car safe. It's Alex Albon across the line who goes to P7. They push down Kimi Antonelli, who's quite possibly going to be out in their home Grand Prix for the first time. Pierre Gasly's improving, Lance Stroll's improving, Fernando Alonso, they're all improving, and Antonelli has got a lot of pressure on them and nothing they can do about it. Gasly to P6, and there it is. Kimi Antonelli will not progress. That is it done for the Italian driver. Aston Martins are trying to push their way through. Lance Stroll to P6. Loves this circuit. Fernando Alonso. What can they do? They cross the line and it's going to be enough. Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc will be out of the home Grand Prix for the Scuderia. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. What a shock to see that one happen, and Aston Martin are going to be very smug. We see the two Ferraris and Kimi Antonelli out of qualifying. The Sauber is followed as well. And I do not believe it. Once again, I will say it. You could not write it. Out of any of the cars that you don't want to get knocked out in Imola, it's the two Ferraris and it's Kimi Antonelli, and they are all gone. P11 for Leclerc, 12 for Hamilton, Antonelli P13, Bortoleto 14, and Colapinto, after crashing in Q1, will not set a lap. They will start the Grand Prix in 15th. Charles Leclerc is furious. Would this be their worst season since 2020? Both drivers out. Small margins here in qualifying. But Carlos Sainz, the star of the show here in Q2. Phenomenal job there from the Spaniard. I think the two McLarens may have... No, sorry, actually, Piastri did set another lap time there. In the final moments. And Carlos Sainz, the man that was politely forced out of the Ferrari team to make way for Lewis Hamilton, has topped the times and knocked both Ferraris out. Alex Albon, of course, joined there. The entirety of the top 10 are in a Williams sandwich. And I don't know what else could be more of a screw you. Of course, there is no hate in their relationship at all, so it's not like that at all. But yeah, that's huge. Absolutely huge stuff. And Carlos Sainz is feeling pretty huge right now. The Ferrari fans do not believe it. Leclerc and Hamilton wave to the Tifosi, but the Tifosi shake their heads back at them. Kimi Antonelli looking very, very disappointed as they walk through the pit lane. And that's completely warranted. But it's the Williams garage. We're sat there with a few smiles. But now they've got to make sure that they're composed and don't get complacent. And they can perform once again to try and have a chance at making it really count in Q3. What a performance from Williams so far this weekend. I was doubting them. They had a brilliant, brilliant Friday to begin with. I doubted them completely after a few moments. And then it all changed. They're definitely happy that they've got Carlos Sainz in the car. Confirmation about a clear track. And hopefully the session will begin in a moment or two. A matter of minutes, we hope. As Max Verstappen will try and give a challenge for pole position. Looking at what we've just seen, do I expect Carlos Sainz to be able to fight for pole? I don't think so. It's still going to be the McLarens. It's just whether the McLarens can get the solid laps in at the final stages. Just imagine though, Carlos Sainz pole position, no one can overtake them. That would be incredible. Gasly very, very happy with their performance there at the end of quali. Very happy with their performance. So a lot of up and downs for the Frenchmen this weekend. And they've put it on an up this time. Will it end on an up? That's the question. Saturday at least. Of course, they've still got a whole another day of driving tomorrow where the excitement reaches its peak. Those 5 lights come on, and there's nothing quite like it. Carlos Sainz sending it across the circuit, over the curbs. It turns 14 and 15. The car lifting its front wheels and the sparks flying. Over the first minutes passed into Q3, we are once again back out on track. Here we go. Let's get it. It's where it's important for the top 10. The positions will be decided. And the 2 Aston Martins are out first. Very, very, very smug. They're going to be incredibly happy with that one. The 2 green cars finding their way through. There are 4 green cars on the grid this year, as there were last year as well. But only 2 of them, and it's the darker green cars that do get through. Brilliant stuff. Fernando Alonso finding some awesome pace. Lance Stroll proving how good they are at this circuit. I think they've scored points at the last, what is it, like two or three occasions that they've raced here. 2023, that would have been a good one as well, but unfortunately we didn't race there. They had a brilliant car. So it's a shame for their sake, of course. Lando Norris. It's crunch time. They are looking for that pole position. They need to do it. They need the momentum. They need to prove that this is their circuit, as we've seen in the past. They have performed absolutely awesomely. And they have to make sure that they continue to do so and get some momentum on their teammate, their championship rival. Lando Norris begins their first flying lap, but it's Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso who will go immediately ahead. It's actually Lance Stroll quicker than Fernando Alonso by a couple of hundredths of a second. So we currently look to see Stroll topping the times. Will we see Alonso be faster in the middle sector? We will see Alonso be faster in the middle sector. So it's all down to the 3rd sector here for the 2 Aston Martins, and they are going to be a bit closer than I expected. So let's see what we can get from the 2. Have some rivalries between the teammates. There's Lance Stroll across the line. That's a P1 for the Canadian driver. It's Fernando Alonso who will immediately take the flag, or take the line I should say, not the flag. 8 minutes still to go. And they are behind under a 10th, so it's close, but still behind as of now. Lando Norris is looking to try and change that as they come out the final couple of corners. It's Isaac Hadjar, though, who crosses the line to take it away from the Aston Martins. It's Lando Norris who destroys the field. Absolutely immense across the line right there. P2 to 4, very close. Lando Norris takes it away. It's Oscar Piastri, though, who takes it further. Since it's George Russell who sets a lap time that's good enough to go just over half a tenth away from Lando Norris. 2.5 tenths away, though, from Max Verstappen, who really is building up the hype. We thought they might have a go at looking at pole position. Then it kind of seemed to go away. Then it came back. Then it went away. And now it's back. It is back very much so. Max Verstappen is going to be the one to fight for this. It's the Williams coming through. Albon crosses the line. And that is going to be a P8. Disappointing since what just happened for Sainz was so amazing. Across the line for Sainz. And they go ahead of their teammate by 0.3 of a second. So another issue here for Albon. Albon not able to get things working very well. Sainz also going to be frustrated with that one, considering what they just had. They are almost last, and they're behind the Aston Martins. The Astons that have been struggling throughout the season so far, finding this performance with a massive upgrade package here in Imola, and it's working magnificently. Some would say it's stupendous. Now just over 5 minutes on the clock, and we see all the cars make their way back to the pit lane, and they will prepare for their final runs of the session. This is the time where you sit in the garage for a bit, focus, see where you're slower and faster compared to the other cars, and react accordingly. A big bit of bottoming out there from George Russell and Acqua Minerale. But they seemed all good to go. Are we about to see one of those laps from Max Verstappen to take their second pole position in a row? Missing out in 23, of course. That was a 14.7, which was the pole time. And they wouldn't have quite beaten it just yet. A 14.746 was the pole time for last year's Grand Prix. They're all going to go a bit quicker again. Not much quicker, but a little bit quicker. So it will be interesting to see where they can get. 22. Was a sprint weekend. We saw Max Verstappen qualify on pole position, and that was when we used to see the grid be decided for the sprint. So the starting grid was also Max Verstappen on the front row. 2021, of course, in Imola, that was Lewis Hamilton getting that pole position. Max Verstappen in P3 at that point. But back to 2024, where the lap times are most comparable in qualifying. A 14.746 was the pole time, and that's what we're going to be looking to try and destroy very, very shortly. Welcome to the most intense part of the weekend for the driver's absolute ability. The anticipation will build up for the race, but this is intensity to the max, where it matters, especially around a circuit as such. The Emilia Romagna Grand Prix held at the Imola circuit. Autodromo Enzo Dino Ferrari. I'm completely wrong with that one. Max Verstappen is sat waiting. And they leave the pit lane to begin. 1 minute, 40 seconds on the clock. And it is Oscar Piastri who will kick off the final laps of the session here in qualifying. Oscar Piastri heads down into turn 1. And I'm sure they're going to look very quick. They've had a massive amount of grip throughout the entire weekend. With the downforce upgrade on the rear wing, it's definitely helped them. And it seems to be a superpower with that car. Max Verstappen is the only one to match them so far. George Russell, although they are very close to the back of Lando Norris, they're not anywhere near Oscar Piastri. And that's an improvement there for Piastri. Not purple in the first sector though, which is a little bit of a worry for the team from Woking as they go down the hill and back up. So much grip in that car. Looks like the F1 game almost. They go to 14 and 15. They go purple in the middle sector and they're currently 1/10 up, looking to take that provisional pole. Can they make it to 2/10 in the final sector? They've got some traffic up in front. They've got a lot of traffic up in front and they're going to be impeded. Oh, no, no, no. Piastri's going to lose out valuable time, surely. They don't get blocked. It seems they'll continue the lap. What's it going to be? And it's 1/10. They lose out on the margins here, and if they lose out by a tiny little margin at the final hurdle, they could be very angry with the other cars who were sat there in the final corners. And I don't know if we got a few cars missing on the line. They did actually get to the line in the end. That was Lance Stroll finishing their session. It's Alex Albon to P5. A brilliant lap from them right there. Taking the flag was Albon, of course. We're going to wait to see what other cars can do. It's Lando Norris who's trying to find the momentum on their teammate, but with a yellow middle sector, it's not looking good. It's Max Verstappen, who's purple in the first again, and looking to try and take it away, but they lose it in the middle. There's Lando Norris across the line, and it's not going to be enough. They do not even improve. Lando Norris will start P3 as of now. It's Max Verstappen who's going to be the challenger. It's going to be, surely, Max Verstappen's pole position. It will not be Max Verstappen. No. I do not believe it. I do not believe it. Max Verstappen not finding it in the final sector. Not improving. And Oscar Piastri, despite having a little bit of traffic in the final part of their lap, they do manage to hold on. Absolutely incredible. And George Russell beats Lando Norris across the line there to finish qualifying. It's Carlos Sainz who beats Alex Albon. It's Isaac Hadjar in the pit lane who will not get their final run, and Gasly down to P10 after all of that. Fernando Alonso will start the race in P5. But George Russell beats the man who was looking to try and get the momentum and pole position. It will not happen. It will not happen. It's Max Verstappen who challenged absolutely masterfully, but once again with the most pole positions out of anyone this season, it's Oscar Piastri who tops the times. And Oscar Piastri does say how he was about to lose it if he did not get that pole position because of all the traffic in the final corner, and I would be very understanding of any kind of emotion they would have shown. But they've held on to it. They have held on to it, and no one will get any penalties for impeding. That's impressive. I'll tell you, that's impressive. Compared to what we had in practice, no problems in quali. Oscar Piastri takes pole position once again in 2025. They'll start from the first spots, they will have to try and beat Max Verstappen alongside them into turn 1, with George Russell closely alongside Lando Norris, of course. It's Fernando Alonso with a brilliant lap to put themselves P5, followed by the 2 Williams of Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon. The margins are tiny between those 3 drivers. Lance Stroll in P8, a brilliant lap from them. The Aston Martins working very nicely together. Of course, it is Isaac Hadjar and Gasly in P10. Out of Q3, however, Charles Leclerc, Hamilton, Antonelli, Bortoleto, Colapinto, Liam Lawson, Nico Hülkenberg, Esteban Ocon, Oliver Behrman and Yuki Tsunoda in P20 at the back of the grid. What a session we've had. What a session. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for watching. I was a little bit all over the place there. I do apologise, but I did not expect Max Verstappen not to have that then. I thought that the timing was going to be there, but no, it didn't happen. And Oscar Piastri, despite having the issues in the final sector, managed to hold on. Very, very well done, though, for Max Verstappen to find that lap time and get themselves in that position. There's got to be a lot to think about for a few teams. And of course, we see George Russell on the medium tyre, followed by the Aston Martin. So maybe that was Antonelli's answer. They should have been on the medium tyre as well. Well, they didn't in the end, and they lost out massively. I do not know what to say. All I can say is thank you very much for watching. Enjoy the race tomorrow. Enjoy the FA Cup, which has started if you're going to watch it. And we'll see you a little bit later on for some practice lobbies that we will probably be hosting. Have a good one. See you next time. Bye-bye.